to Quall's perspective. Just as I push off the railing on deck 17, my ship cycles from diurnal to nocturnal, the illumination of the starboard gallery dimming significantly, and allowing the ghostly light of the galactic core starfield to be visible as it streams down from the window's ceiling above me. I glide down to the balcony on the walkway of deck 5, walk across it, and beneath the hand-painted Latin sign proclaiming this dorm a little deaf world. I am pleased not to hear the invasive sounds of Terran music streaming out from the common room. Someone's managed to remember the privacy field, it seems. Well, either that or they've turned in early while I was finishing my administration. The door slides open for me, and I see it's the former, as most of the deaf worlders and a few of the garden worlders still aboard are revealed, watching a very peculiar sight with mirthful faces. Twila has her right hand hinged back against her forearm, revealing a heat gun in her now diminated wrist. She is directing the jet of warm air into a tunnel she's presumably melted into the bottom of a 50cm wide and 30cm tall cylinder of opaque ice that rests on the coffee table. As my head passes through the soundproof barrier that encloses this room, I hear the voice of a young Terran woman cheerfully singing, "Found beneath my feet and rip parts out of their cores. I want to get stuck down in the deepest ship where the guts get raw and sore. I want to be merely infantry where they send me off to war. Oh, how I want a big old hammer and be fighting to the break of day. Let me run with the old boys like we're charging with a light brigade. I want to feel the heart of dead man's breath." Fuck! I want to feel the heat of dead man's breath and match the glory with a roar. I want to be melee infantry in the orbital core. To bassy, percussive music over the room's speakers. The smell of ethanol hangs thick on the air from the quantity of exposed Terran drinks. A building roar of mostly Terran voices rises as Twila finishes excavating her tunnel and swings her head back into its proper position before reaching for a short wooden pole. She inserts it into the hole and pokes it through to the other side. A deafening cheer goes up and drowns out the music as, emerging from the far side of the ice, comes a 10cm metal cube with the Terran sea glyph debossed into each of its faces. My shipboard manager extends the actuated fingers of her elegant robotic hand to the block, picks it up, and brings it to the top of the ice, where I now notice just the top face of an identical metal block protruding from the surface, only with an A instead of a C on its face, placing it down exactly above it. I'm able to use the height of the ice cylinder and my familiarity with the most common Terran script's alphabet to infer the existence of an obscured B block. The unnervingly raucous impacting of deaf-world bodies, as the crowd laughs and Twila sits down smugly next to her biological mother, makes me glad I opted against bringing my daughter here tonight. Too high a risk of accident with this level of deaf-world inebriation. Jenny has a mixture of chagrin and amusement on her freckled face, as Twila smugly folds her arms and the others good-naturedly mock her, though for what I'm unable to discern. I spot my clan sister over by the side of the room, sitting on what is usually my perch. She looks a touch uncomfortable, but regardless, I'm pleased she's come, and I'm pleased she's been allowed into this space by its occupants. One notable thing is how close she has allowed Fluffy to lie to the base of her perch. I stride over to her. "Good evening, Waquark," I greet pleasantly. "Oh, good evening, sister," she answers distractedly. Fluffy chafes in reproach and I chitter, "Sorry, Fluffy, I didn't mean to leave you out," extending my bionic talons, which she prefers to my natural ones, to scritch her front right shoulder. Mollified, she begins emitting deep purrs and rolls against the wall, lifting her right legs to expose her underside to me. Taking the cue, I transfer my scritching to the dark blue and black striped fur at her sternum. "So, what exactly happened to cause there to be a 40-litre block of ice fused to the top of my ship's furnishing over there, sister?" I ask mirthfully, as I give some much-craved attention to my CSS's companion animal. Waquark frowns, looking over at the crowd we're separated from. "A little while ago, Ms. McLeod was talking about early Terran VIs, called AIs at the time, but not capable of true sentience. Just effective predictors of how humans generally structure sentences, and only capable of getting things right if they have been trained on correct information, which had usually been stolen by the very wealthy individuals who were apparently funding their development, primarily because they thought it would allow them to dispense with the wages they were obligated to pay their human workforce. She then told us of the many questions you could ask these VIs, which they would be incapable of answering, including this one. She raises an allure to point at the block of ice. There are 3 cubes on the table. Block A rests on top of Block B, which rests on top of Block C. How do you get the bottom block on top of the top block without touching or moving the top or middle blocks? Apparently this sounded enough like a Terran brain teaser to fool all of these VIs into thinking that there must be an answer, and so none of them realized the problem they were being asked to solve was entirely insoluble. At that point, Miss Twiller volunteered that she thought there was a way to do it, just that it would only work if the blocks were made of a substance with a density significantly greater than 1 gram by 1 centimeter cubed. You can guess the rest, I'm sure. Still frowning over, with a look of mild perplexity adorning her face. Well, I smile, hopping up onto Fluffy's side for a better scritching angle while looking over at the crowd. My guess would be that a hearty debate ensued and crescendoed in a challenge being issued, which Twiller just won and Jenny just lost. Plucked the Ockler mid-fall, she confirms. As I would expect, sister. At this point I see Victor noticing my presence, his emerald green eyes fixing on me from across the room for a brief moment before he excuses himself and begins making his way over to where I stand. As he approaches, his forward-facing eyes briefly flick to my clan sister, as he politely acknowledges, "Off to a Korak?" with a nod. "CSS Taylor," she acknowledges in return, with a slightly too formal dip of her head. Without further ado, my daughter's godfather returns his attention to me and says, "Hey Cap, glad you made it. Can I have a quick word with you in my room, please?" His tone serious, but not urgent. "Of course, Victor. Please, lead on," I agree, extending a wing to the common room door. He turns and walks away, myself following after. At the point I'm just about to pass through the privacy field, I jump out of my feathers due to Fluffy appearing on my right. Intentionally or unintentionally, she managed to approach me in the very narrow blind spot directly behind my head, and because every aspect of her physiology is perfectly optimized for stealth, I didn't hear her following. The music falls immediately silent as I pass back into the hallway. Fluffy overtakes me and falls in at her master's right side. Without turning her head, Victor extends a hand to the top of hers, between her ears. He turns into the room he used to primarily occupy, but now serves mainly as Fluffy's room, gun locker, and cuddle puddle venue. He breaks from Fluffy's side to fetch a heavy perch it would take multiple Requali to lift. One-handedly, he picks it up and walks across the room to place it beside where Fluffy is laying down in front of his weapons locker. I walk to it and hop up onto it, facing where I know he'll be sitting. Victor comes down on the floor between his pet's front and middle legs, leaning against her torso and using her as a seatback. I have a brief flash of him, sat on the floor with his pet hypercarnivore and in front of a rack of weapons as a successful warlord from ancient Earth. It would be amusing enough to laugh at, except that I know what he will have asked me here to talk about. Taking Fluffy's stubby front leg in his hands, and running his fingers through her fur, he starts, "Cap, But I cut him off. "Victor, I wish to speak first," I state firmly. His copper eyes tilt upward in the middle to convey mid-surprise, but he raises a hand to gesture me to go ahead. I take a deep breath and begin. "Victor, I know that you have been grappling with the question of whether to retire from this line of work since the incident on Prosperity. I know that everything that woman did to you was extremely traumatic, that being a man of such agency, having your control and ownership of yourself stripped away must have been a nightmare. I know this, but I also do not wish to part with you, Victor. So, I have devised a compromise." The man cocks an eyebrow and asks, Compromise? Yes, I say. My heart's beating at 1000 RPM. Victor, what would you say to a position on the bridge? The bridge? He frowns in confusion. Doing what? I'm sure there will be many tasks I can find for you to take care of, Victor. A slight twinge of desperation creeping into my voice. Death world analysis, for instance? Or remote mission overseeing? If you want to be more useful, I'd be happy to provide training in any task that took your fancy that you weren't already qualified for. Cap, Of course, if that offer isn't to your liking, I could grant you an extended sabbatical and allow you to rent this room at a cost of 1 credit per 50 diurnals, just to make the whole arrangement legal and official. You could take some time not working to consider things and think about whether you want to continue in this role, and of course, if you do, you'd be welcome back any time, and if not, I'd happily... Victor throws up his palm, firmly stopping me. My chest rises and falls rapidly with shallow, panted breaths. Breathe, Cap. Slow and deep, he instructs firmly. I waggle my beak in a breathless Terran nod, and consciously moderate my breathing. When he is satisfied that I have sufficiently calmed down, Victor says, Cap, I really appreciate it, and I'm really touched. I'm sorry you've been stressing out about this. I didn't realize. Your ideas were good. Well, not good exactly, but they were definitely thoughtful. I actually wanted to tell you I've made my decision. Oh, Titan. There was never any hope of enticing him to stay, was there? I'm staying, Cap. It takes me several long moments to break from my stupor to ask, I'm sorry? I'm staying, he repeats simply. I stare down at him, blankly, while numerous questions swirl in my mind. None make it to my beak. It was the break, he explains. Being on Citadel with nothing much to do while we was waiting for Parliament to decide if Kakoan and Vig got to stay there, or if we had to take him home. It made not even 3 months feel like more than 6. I realized that's what my life would be if I wasn't working. I also realized whoever you got to replace me, not to sound arrogant, but probably wouldn't be anywhere near as good. That'd put them at risk, the ship at risk, and all my friends still aboard it at risk. I also realized that I'd be dragging Toon away from a career she'd worked hard for, and that didn't sit right. Then, of course, I realized I'd not get to see everyone aboard without specifically arranging a holochat. Your compromises have fixed some of those issues, but not all of them. Anyways, I talked it over with Ali, and separate with Toon, and I decided to stay. After our honeymoon, I'd like to request a full renewal of my employment contract, and return to duty in my position if that's alright. Unable to believe how well this went, my beak flaps open and closed a few times before I manage, That's fine, Victor. More than fine. I'll gladly renew your employment. I hop down from my perch and make for the door. I'll draw it up right now and The man is between me and the door before I reach it, wirily looking down at me. No, you won't, he chides. You're mental if you think I'm letting you go back to work this late. You're coming back to the party, and that ain't up for discussion. Later. I stumble across my quarter's threshold, inebriated on dilute Terran wine, and see my daughter excitedly waddling towards me on her adorably oversized legs. Kika, 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 she screeches. Well now, what are you doing awake, little one? I chitter, as I extend my natural talons to catch her front and raise her to mine. I wrap my wings around her and tap my beak against hers. She responds with heart-smeltering over-enthusiasm, whacking the side of her beak into mine as hard as she's able, only stopped from being painful by her diminutive size. My life mate appears, looking exhausted, and says, I'm sorry, Taqual, she just won't go up. Gesturing to the baby perch we moved her to, once she outgrew the incubator. No matter, sweet fruit. We can let her tire herself out for a little and then offer her the perch again. Can't we, Takak? I say, playfully nipping her with my beak while she squeaks in delight. Once I've stopped, she looks up at me and demands, Anka Victa! Play! Walk, Anka Victa! Uncle Victor's sleeping right now, little one, but you can play with him tomorrow. and the next day, and the next day.